Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. This podcast is ran by two ladies who play games, shout profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to the Wheel of Crime podcast. My name is Jenn.
And my name is Emily. Another week in March is here today.
Wow, I can't believe it's already March. This year is zipping by, but also, like we said last week, like January, February are always like the long months, so I feel like it's like from this point on that like the year goes by so fast.
I'm just finally starting to get used to the sun, like, setting later in the day. Like, I feel
7
so
minutes
blessed.
later every day.
I know.
So
I feel so
nice.
blessed because I keep remembering back in like December when the sun goes down at like whatever time, like 3 or 4 p.m., which is
like
hella
4
depressing.
p.m. Yeah.
But we're getting there.
I
So
know,
close.
it's 5:30 where I am, and I can still see the sun outside my window. So that is a win in my book.
Exactly.
Won't be here for much longer, but I'm going to take it while I can.
Yeah. Pretty much same boat here, obviously, because while we live in different places, still pretty close.
Same time
to each
zone.
other. Same time zone. Yeah, I don't know. Like I say every week, we could talk about the weather, which sucks and nobody wants to hear, or we could talk about something fun we did this last week. So what have you been up to now that we're kind of getting a little further into the year?
I haven't been up to much. I've just been working and like trying to like, I feel like I'm kind of in a space right now where I'm trying to like, this happens every spring. I'm trying to get my shit together. I'm trying to like, feel like a real person again, because I feel like I get into like the winter saddies and
The winter blues, yeah.
and like I get depresso and like feel like shit, look like shit, and now I'm trying to like actively work against that. So that's like my mission lately, but also we just started like actually shooting at work, so it's like my busy time, which is great for me. No, it's not.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. You're like, oh my god, I live in hell. But now it's just slightly more hellish. But yeah, I do emphasize with the trying to, prepare yourself thing, like we talked about a little bit in our last episode, like spring cleaning and that kind of thing. I've actually really, really, really been suppressing an urge. I this happens a lot for me, where I have the urge to do something dramatic with my appearance. And I've been seeing a lot of videos of French bobs lately.
I don't know, that feels...
I really, because here's the thing. I did actually really like how I looked with shorter hair. It's the growing them out that sucks. Because there's always like the awkward lengths where you like, your face looks kind of too long and the haircut looks weird.
You know what I think would look actually really cool on you?
What?
A shag.
A shag? Like, what are you meaning?
Like, Google shag haircut or like long shag haircut.
I feel like I might have just gotten that. Hang on.
It's like really short layers.
Long shag haircut. Oh, I see what you mean. Ooh, that does look really nice. It's very like Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you could go shorter with it too, but I feel like that would look so cool on you.
That would be really cute. Maybe that'll be my dramatic thing then. Because I did kind of just do like when I went in last, I asked for like a soft kind of long mullet thing. But it's not very dramatic, it's very soft. And I don't know, like I said, I just have a craving for the dramatic. But then that's the thing too about like cutting your hair short is once you do it, you can't take it back. I mean, you can put extensions in, I guess, but that's expensive.
That's a lot. That's too much work for me. I don't know. I'm also having that itch where I've spent so long growing my hair back out from my last itch to cut a bob.
Yes.
That now I'm having the itch again. And I'm like, I need to be stopped.
I know. At least we're on the same page with that. So, but this is the problem now, is if either of us get a bob, it's just going to convince the other person to get a bob.
Oh, I know. That's why you can't, because I can't, and I need you to not.
Okay. Well, here's my thing, because and we've already talked about this 1,000 times, and then I end up changing my mind somehow in, like, the realm of tattoos and piercings. But I will honestly say I don't actually feel inspired in that department. It's more something... I'm looking for more so something, like, not, like, aesthetic, but it's, like, a different brand of, like, self-expression, right? Like, I feel like tattoos and piercings are, like, one facet of me, whereas, like, hair and makeup and, like, nails, like, more cosmetic kind of stuff is another department, and the department I'm feeling is cosmetic.
Easily changeable things.
Yeah, like, a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, I feel ya. I'm kind of, like, on a journey with my skin right now, so that's, like, my big thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to, like...
My skin journey right now is just the fact it's dry as hell.
Yeah.
Dry! I hate it here. But that leads us back to the weather. But your skin does look great, though, by the way.
We're working on her, you know? Like, we recently started Accutane, so...
Oh!
We'll see. I feel like I gotta go down before I can go back up.
That's fair. I'll knock on wood for you, because I have real wood here.
Me too.
There we go. I also have fake wood here, if that helps.
No.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think about what I've been up to this last week. Just other than resisting the urge to have a bob, I did talk a little bit with Jenn about this before we started today's episode, but I'm trying to get back into reading again. This is one of my cyclical habits. I feel like I go through time periods where I play video games a lot, and then that crests down, and then I play reading a lot. And then I read books a lot, and then that crests down, and then I get back into, like, video games again. It just kind of goes through there. But it's definitely, like...
That's normal.
Yeah, I feel, like, bad, though, because reading is one of those things where I feel like... And I know we've talked about this on the show. We've talked this on the show before. I need to go back to school.
Or to bed.
Or to bed. But, like, it feels like one of those things where... Not to say that the books I read, like, make me smarter, because they don't, but it feels more like you're kind of accomplishing something. With video games, it's more into, like, the fun pastime territory versus, like, reading kind of feels a little bit different, a little bit more productive.
Yeah. Reading definitely feels like a productive hobby for me, too, which is why I feel like even though I really enjoy doing it, I kind of avoid it sometimes when I'm, like, in this mindset of, like, I just want to relax. I can't do anything that feels remotely productive right now. But then I get too in my head about it, and then I end up just scrolling on TikTok, and that's even worse.
That's the thing, because I get sucked into social media because it's so easy, and then I kind of feel like I can turn my brain off when I'm doing it, versus, like, my brain has to be on if I'm, like, reading, or if, like, I'm actively watching a movie or something.
Yeah, it's not the best habit, and it's one I would love to break, but I actually have, like, no plans of even trying to break it right now.
Same.
That's later. That's later Jen's problem.
Yeah, if anything, I would just like to be in the mindset where I enjoy more productive hobbies to the point where it naturally cuts back on my desire for screen time. That's kind of where I'm at.
That's the dream, I feel.
Right? Yeah. Right? Or, like, at nighttime, I just get tired and go to sleep instead of physically being tired, and then my brain is just thinking strange and unusual things for hours and hours at nighttime.
I would love if I could get back into the habit of, like, reading before bed, because I used to be in that habit, and it was amazing. And then you just, like, you naturally get tired, you put your book down, and you go to sleep, you know?
Yeah, right? Maybe that can be our unofficial March 2025 goal.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right, well, let's get into our wheel of questions.
Yes, spin away, Em.
What kind of supernatural being would you want in your house?
In my house?
And when I say supernatural being, I'm just meaning something like typically what I talk about on the podcast. Like, I cover a lot. Like, I do a lot of cryptids. I do a lot of, like, ghosts. I do a lot of, like, aliens, other mythological creatures. Of everything we've talked about or that you know of, what would you want in your house?
Maybe, like, some, like, little gremlins they can clean up while I'm away or something. Or, like, goblins.
I feel like...
Cleaning goblins.
I do feel like that kind of, I don't know if they clean specifically, but I feel like we've talked about on the podcast, the elves in Iceland, the Iceland elves. I think we talked about them before.
Yeah, but can
That
they
feels
clean
like
and cook for
goblinish
me?
territory.
That's what I want.
Don't come for me, Iceland, because I know, I know there's some very cultural things around specifically their elves, especially for some of the older folks. I really do not remember that much about them right now, but if they clean, I would like to know. And also, how much are plane tickets?
What about you? What do you want in your house?
What would I want in my house?
Or in your lake?
Or in my lake? It would be cool to have like a little lake monster in my lake. Although, with living by the lake, I think that would mean that I would have to move. So maybe not.
You could have like a little Ogopogo in there.
Yeah, just like a tiny one. A little plesiosaur.
A baby one?
Oh, yeah! And it stays a baby forever. That'd be cute. Or, I do like the idea of having, like, some sort of, like, little thing that roams around my house and cleans or just exists. Like, there is a type of creature called a brownie, and I don't know if we've talked about them on the podcast before, but they are supposedly these little creatures that live in your house, but they're kind of a little bit mischievous. Like they'll take one sock out of the dryer and leave the other one, and some of those kinds of things. Take your spare change.
I don't want a thief in my house.
Collect the buttons off your jacket, but they protect your home. So it's like a pact almost. So like they'll mildly inconvenience you, but protect your home from bad entities. And I feel like that's just chaotic enough where I wouldn't mind it. Would I love it? No. But at the same time, I do like the idea of my house being protected when I'm not around.
Fair. I'm gonna go with house hippo. That's what I want.
It's funny, when I asked this question originally, I'm like, there's a pretty good chance that either Jen or I are going to say house hippo. Because I hadn't really, when I write my questions, I try not to put too much thought into them, just so, like, we can kind of, like, mull over our answers together and everything. Mm-hmm. But I was like, a house hippo would be pretty nice.
He's so cute. And
so
it's not even a
cute.
mythical creature. It's just something we actually have here in Canada.
I know. So that's the thing. It's just you don't see them that often. It might as well be a mythical creature with how often you see them.
Really hard to find. But
it's a shame they were hunted into extinction.
I know. That's so sad.
So sad. All right. Should we spin for our next question?
Yes.
What supernatural being do you want least in your house?
A skinwalker.
Yeah, that's a good one. And fair, actually.
I won't use their other name because it spooks Emily.
It's not that. It's that I just try my best to not say and do things that people who are actually a part of those communities say not to do, because I feel like that invokes bad vibes. And I'm not here for them, regardless of what I think.
It's true. We try and avoid bad vibes. What about you? What's your answer?
Actively. What do I want least in my house? The devil. Actually, you know what? For some
well, he's already inside of you, so that's
he's inside of all of us. Actually, for some of the stories that I share, he is kind of iconic. So maybe, of all the things, he's probably not the worst. I honestly, your answer of a windy boy is a pretty good answer, because they're very local for us. Like, for the part of the world they're supposed to live in is literally where we live. And they are cannibals and super fucking scary. So that's a good answer, too. In the spirit of trying to come up with a different answer, though, what am I going to say? I really don't like the idea of, like, I don't know if you want to say, like, demon or, like, poltergeist, but something invisible that, like, is maliciously out to get you in your home. Like, in the scary movies or whatever, when, like, the family, like, goes to bed and they wake up and there's, like, a bunch of knives on the ceiling pointed down at them or something from the roof. Like, anything like that, I'm good. Like, life's hard enough. I don't need that.
I was just thinking, like, if I was to pick a different answer, I'd be like, I don't want, like, an angry ghost in my house.
Yeah, like something that's like, get out of my house. And I'm like, you're dead. Get out of my house.
I own this land now.
Leave me alone. Yeah, I honestly like, and between our answers, I feel like the general vibe is anything malicious that is either gonna kill, hurt, or eat me. I generally do not want in my house.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to invite friends and then have their friends live in my house.
Yeah. You're barely welcome. Let's not push it.
Yeah, you're pushing it. Oh, so your weird little demon ass lives in my house and threatens me with knives. You're barely okay, and you want to bring friends over?
Nah.
No, thank you.
Move out. Time
Hard
to go.
pass.
Exactly. All right, let's spin for our next question.
Hell yeah. If you could be old-timey nobility, what title would you want, and of which country?
I definitely would not want to be French because those bitches were the first to go on the guillotine.
I like that's like your first thing. You're like, I just remember those French guys literally lost their heads. No, thank you.
Pass. I want to be like from some small, like really small country where like
Yeah.
the nobility is still figureheads. Like not England because that's boring, but like some tiny little itty bitty cutie country where like they have a prime minister now, but like their kings and queens are still like figureheads, you know?
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. I would want to be in like what title?
I would not want to be a queen. That's too much responsibility.
Yeah.
Maybe like what's one step lower than like a princess?
I don't know. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna Google it. Nobility titles and their standings. Or their rankings. So, traditional nobility titles are as follows: the Emperor/Empress, King/Queen, Grand Duke, Grand Duchess, Prince/Princesses, Duke/Duchess, Marquis and Marchioness, Earl and Countess, Viscount and Viscountess, and Baron and Baroness.
Dude, I want to be the Grand Duchess. That sounds so sick.
That does sound really fucking sick. It's just below King/Queen, but above Prince/Princess.
But I feel like you always hear about like the queen and the king and the princess and the prince, but like no one's fucking with the Grand Duchess because they have no idea what she does or what her standing is.
Oh, so but she definitely sounds important.
Yeah, so that's perfect. I could get all the money and benefits with little scrutiny.
Exactly. I actually really like the sound of either a countess or a baroness. I don't know. They kind of have a little bit of flavor.
It's true. I feel like you could live mostly a normal life as like a baroness.
Right? In like the quiet like Swiss or Austrian countryside somewhere, you know? Yeah. And like a castle that's like partially renovated, like the main part of it is so it's still living space, but the rest of it is kind of like left to like not fall apart on purpose, but you know, it's like antiquated, it's left to age, it's left to kind of like be as it was back in its heyday.
Exactly. Yes, I love this for us.
Sounds delicious. Love that for us. All right, let's spin for our last question. Oh my god. If you could have a flower name in your name somewhere, what flower would you pick?
I would not pick Petunia. That's the worst one.
It is. It really is. Yeah, that has to be the worst one. I was trying to think about, like, what would it be another bad one, but... I don't know. I thought about this. I don't know if I would pick, like... I feel like Rose is super basic. I would want something like, like, not, like, so common, but recognizable enough.
Like, I like Hazel. I like Clover. I like Poppy. I like Dahlia. Camila is pretty.
Mm-hmm. Lily.
I feel like Lily's kind of basic. Like, Lily, Rose, and Daisy to me are basic. You know?
I like
Iris is pretty.
Iris.
Yeah. Iris is pretty.
Mm-hmm.
There's some good options. I think I would go with, like... If I'm picking out of those ones, like, maybe... Hazel or Clover. Because I want to be named after your cat.
Hell yeah. She would love that. She is an icon, of course.
Yeah. Like, I would take her name because obviously.
Obviously. I feel like of the ones we talked about, I would pick then either Poppy or Iris.
I really like Poppy, but I feel like that name does not suit me.
That's fair. I feel like Poppy is a name that you'd have to, like if I was to, like, decide, like, oh, it's somewhere in my name now, I am Emily Poppy Blake, then I feel like I'd have to adopt a Poppy personality.
And it's that, the Poppy personality is so specific.
Right? It's more eccentric than I actually am, which is why I actually think I gravitate a little bit more towards Iris. Iris feels a little bit more in character for me.
Iris, I think, suits you. Like, it's kind of got that, like, old-fashioned, but, like, sweet and, like, nature-oriented that I feel like fits your vibe.
Right? And it's not super
Witchy.
common, but it is recognizably, like, floral.
Yeah. Well, it's, like, a little witchy, you know?
Yeah, I do like that. It invokes a certain, like, imagery.
Yeah.
Hell
Which
yeah.
one do you think suits me the best?
Between Hazel and...
Well, like, any of
Clover?
them.
Or any of them? I like how Camilla sounds, but it feels very Spanish, which you are not.
That is true. I'm a white woman.
Yes. So, I want to say, like, one, like, Flora, but that's not quite right either. That feels more like it feels like it has, like, a super flowery smell, which you're not really. I'm just going through the list here. I could see maybe, like, Dahlia, if the Black Dahlia wasn't a thing.
Even if it is.
Because I do like Dahlia for you a lot. Or, like, Calla. Like Calla Lily, but without the lily part, just the Calla part.
I feel like I could see Dahlia for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if my mom was, like, that kind of person, I could have seen her name me Dahlia.
Yeah, right? It definitely is more... It's very fitting for me in my brain compared to some of these other ones.
I feel like I'm just not, like, a super flowery personality. Like, I don't know that a lot of nature names would really suit me, you know?
That's what I was meaning by, like, flora. Like, I know that just means flower in, like, Latin or something. But I feel like with certain types of nature names, they come, like I said, with a smell. Or they come with, like, a certain, like, vibe to them. Like, that, for me, feels super floral, which you're not really. Like you just said, a super floral person. Or, like I said, Camilla feels Spanish. Or, like...
See, to me, you're an Iris or a Hazel. I could see either of those for you.
Yeah, I could see that too. Or, like, Holly feels, like, super joyful, like, super, like, positive. Which
and
neither of us
me.
are. Which is not us. Or, like, Aster feels very, like, very hippie. Like, very woo-woo, very spiritual.
Yeah, and I cannot see my parents naming me that.
Yeah, whereas, like, Ivy's, like, a little bit more tomboyish.
I could kind of see Ivy for myself. Maybe.
I feel like if Ivy had, like, a little bit of flowers to it, like, not, like, a bunch, but, like, a little bit more, like, not, like, versatility. If Ivy's had more to them than just the leaf, I feel like it would suit you more, but you're not basic enough to be just a leaf person.
Aw, thanks, Em.
Right?
Or should I say, Iris?
But apparently we could talk about this forever. So,
Yes.
do you want to guess what my story for you is today?
It's about someone who has some cryptid that has a flowery name that you don't want in your house.
No. I'm going to read you the description, and then we'll go from there.
All right.
Sir George Mackenzie of Rosehaw, year 1636 to May 8th, 1691, was a Scottish lawyer, lord advocate, essayist, and legal writer, and he was nicknamed Bloody Mackenzie.
Holy shit, guys, she's talking about a real person. This is like 1 in 4 times that this happens a year.
Less than that, I think. Maybe 3 times if we're being honest. But yeah, I am talking today about a real person with some extra stuff. But I will preface, today's story is one of those ones where it is heavily localized, and a lot of the information I saw was very like a couple sentences here and there based off of like what people know from history, what people know who like visited the area, from what people know who lived there. So today I am fully crediting my story to Icy Sedgwick from the blog icysedgwick.com. They literally compiled a bunch of different information from a lot of different resources and like what did the extra step of like gathering their notes and everything. So I'm just doing my part of sharing that this is their work. And I did want to share this story today, but I found that I was picking up so many pieces that they had already included in their blog. And then anything extra I found for information directly came from their blog, from research that they did or stuff that they knew.
Right.
And I was like, well, at this point, it would be unfair to not mention or credit them, because either way, it's kind of like, I find sometimes with smaller stories, like the ones that I do, it does get a little bit like the internet kind of becomes a circle all of a sudden, where it's like, oh, like this source pulls from this source, and then this source pulls from this source. And everything just kind of circled back to this particular blog. So I'm going to share with you guys today what they have to say on their blog. So again, that is Icy Sedgwick. Thank you, Icy. You are an MVP.
Love you, Icy. I hope.
Pookie, thank you.
I hope good cryptid lives in your house.
Yes, I hope all the good cryptids. Actually, maybe not all of them. Maybe just one. One good cryptid lives in your house. All right, so I literally just took this from what they wrote because, like I said, at this point it felt only fair. So any personal flair we read today is specifically from Icy. So again, thank you, Icy. I am obsessed with your writing style, by the way, if you ever find us.
Love you, Icy.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
It is a cold night in 1998. The type Edinburgh specializes in, when the frigid air seems to work its way into the very marrow of your bones. A homeless man seeks shelter for the night, and he finds himself in Greyfriars Kirkyard. Aha! Look! There's a building up ahead! The man tries the door, but it's locked. But wait, what's that? He finds a hole near the back of the mausoleum. Who knows what it's for? And at least it'll get him inside and under a roof. He slips inside and finds himself within the mausoleum. A staircase takes him down to the crypt. He finds the coffins of the Mackenzie family. Perhaps there are valuables in the casket. Before he can find out, a hole opens in the floor. He drops into a chamber below, filled with centuries-old bones. Panic-stricken in the dark, the man somehow manages to clamber out of the burial pit. The legend tells that he flees in the mausoleum in fright, encountering a local dog walker in the process. Except it isn't just the homeless man who leaves the mausoleum that night. According to the stories, one of Edinburgh's most vicious poltergeists begins to walk abroad as well.
What if?
So now you understand why I was like, I couldn't not include Icy's notes. I was like, they've just got such poetic flair. It'd be unfair to leave it out. And it's very on point for today's story. So again, thank you, Icy.
We love that. Icy's an icon.
Love it. But let's get into it. So King James VI had argued that the king was the head of the church. The Church of Scotland argued that only God could be the head of the church. This caused problems because James wanted a united church now that he ruled over both England and Scotland. It wasn't resolved until, or by the time King Charles I came to throne in 1624. Thanks to his fervent belief in the divine rights of kings, he ignored the wishes of the Scottish Church. He introduced the Common Book of Prayer in 1637 and outlawed all other forms of worship. This understandably led to riots and protests in Scotland. Charles branded anyone opposing the prayer book as a traitor. His opponents decided to create a national convent so that it was Scotland opposing Charles and not individuals. The signing of the national convent in Greyfriars churchyard in 1638 by William Brassey Hole, which is quite the name.
I could think of 1,000 jokes about that Brassey Hole, but I'll refrain.
Just saying that William Brassey Hole must have lived a very, very interesting life.
Yes, he must have.
Mm-hmm. And it was signed on February 28th, 1638, and those who signed it became known as the Covenanters. This declared their pledge that Scotland was loyal to the king, but it would remain a Presbyterian country. The covenant was even sanctioned off by the Scottish Parliament in 1640, and the First English Civil War began 2 years later, and the Covenanters supported the parliamentarians to depose of Charles. So that's like a micro speck of history directly before I get into my story here for context.
Right.
So, Mackenzie. Mackenzie actually began his career defending the Covenanters and even got the Marquis of Argyll acquitted from a charge of treason, but he'd only taken on these defense cases to make his name. Once established, he switched sides, defending the king and the Scottish Church. This support paid off since he became king's advocate for Charles II in Scotland in the year 1677. He persecuted the Covenanters, who were now outlaws, and after the Battle of Bothwell Bridge in 1679, Mackenzie imprisoned 1,200 of them in Greyfriars Kirkyard in the area now known as the Covenanters' Prison. At the time, it was an open area at the southern end of the Kirkyard, enclosed by the town wall. They were left in this outdoor area without food, water, or shelter, and hundreds of them died. Guards mistreated them, and their heads ended up on spikes along the gate. And by the end of 1679, only 48 Covenanters remained out of the 1,200. Mackenzie actually fell foul of his own enthusiasm when William of Orange came to the throne. He gave religious control back to the Presbyterians, the group Mackenzie persecuted with such relish, and then Mackenzie fled Scotland for England, where he then died in 1691, and in a twist of irony, he was buried in Greyfriars, a mere stone's throw away from the Covenanters' prison. A couple of centuries ago, John Hayes, a failed criminal, apparently hid from the law in the Black Mausoleum, which is the spooky little place with all the bones that I mentioned in Icy's prologue.
We love spooky places with all the bones.
Yep. And he spent 6 months there, sneaking out to scavenge whenever possible. When the police finally caught him, he'd gone mad. He insisted that the coffins in the mausoleum moved every night, and apparently he could hear Mackenzie scraping around inside of his coffin. And a homeless man was... Yeah!
I hate
right?
that.
Ugh, literally.
If I heard someone scraping around in their coffin, that'd be it for me.
Imagine going to a place where the tombs or the caskets are above ground. Already so scary. And then not to mention, you are in a situation where you don't have a home and you're like, this has a roof at least, and you live there, and you have to listen to the scraping of bones?
Gross.
Bones?
I think that's
Icky.
worse than the long fingernails from the
Fingernails
vampire.
scratching the window of the first vampire. It's up there. It is up there.
Ugh.
Yuck. He insisted that the coffin's the mausoleum moved every night, and he could hear Mackenzie scraping around inside of his coffin. Cool, awesome, love it.
Gross.
And a homeless man wasn't the only person to end up in the mausoleum more recently. On June 30th of 2003, so not super recently, but 20 years ago, 2 teenagers forced open the doors and desecrated an unidentified male corpse. One of them cut off its head and used it like a glove puppet. And if you believe the reports that grew up around the story, they supposedly also drank wine out of the skull. Which, I don't know what kind of stuff Scottish teenagers are getting up to, but that's like, for like Canadian teenagers, the most they do is smoke pot. Like, nobody's drinking wine out of skulls that I'm aware of. I suppose
that is very European specific.
Isn't it? It feels super dirtbag teenage European goth.
Yeah. Like, and they're like, isn't this such a metaphor for life?
Yeah. This is poetry in motion, guys.
We make fun of the Europeans because we know they make fun of us, okay?
This is true. We're
because they're living way better lives.
And they for certainly made fun of us. We were there to hear it. Because you guys are not nice. You make fun of people to their faces.
And because I'm jealous of them every day.
It's true. Again, iconic. All right. So these boys, who were 15 and 17, caused around 10,000 pounds worth of damage. And a ghost tour guide challenged the boys after seeing them carrying around something in a blanket. And the guide caught the police, who caught one of the boys, who returned to the graveyard with a girl who did not believe his story. Then, authorities tried both boys under the violation of sepulture law.
Oh my god, there's a real crime in this story? Holy shit.
I know! This is why I was excited to share it. But, so basically they were trying them under, or, yeah, they were, what's the word I'm searching for? Trying them under this law, which was originally designed specifically for grave robbers, like people who were, like, looking for, like, gold watches or whatever. But these shitheads literally just wanting to play with body parts technically also get tried under that same law.
I mean, good, I guess, because weird either way.
Definitely, absolutely. So, then the mausoleum became infamous after these 2 events. The doors remained locked even to this day. And then, just so people are aware, there is a note because IC had gone and visited this mausoleum. And they say that as of the year 2012, when they visited Edinburgh, it's like a locked, protected area. Like, you can go see it, but obviously you cannot go inside of it to go listen for
bones
or
and
whatever.
Drink wine out of their skulls.
Yeah,
not allowed
think
anymore.
They were like, once is enough, we think, and honestly, fair. That's very fair.
I think I, as a dead person, would prefer if people didn't, so I can understand.
Right? I feel like as a dead person, I'd rather my bones be as far away from human teenagers as much as physically as possible.
Yeah, I really would prefer that as well.
Yeah. There's many places I'd rather my bones be, actually, but that's a story for another day.
That's a question for a different episode.
Exactly. So, since 1999, at least 140 people have collapsed, and 350 documented attacks are on record for, like, in cases pertaining specifically to the Black Mausoleum, like where this guy's buried. And within a week of this homeless man's incursion on the tomb, a woman felt herself blown back from the mausoleum by an icy blast of air at one point. And then somebody named Jan Andrew Henderson even started the City of the Dead tour company to both investigate these sightings as well as to speak to witnesses that had been affected by the Black Mausoleum. The tour takes in the whole of Greyfriars Kirkyard, including the normally locked Covenanters prison, which, if you and I travel to Europe again, I do want to check this out, by the way. Like, get a haunted tour of a giant graveyard in Scotland. Abso-fucking-lutely.
Sounds spooky. I love it.
Right? So visitors to this mausoleum record both hot and cold spots, inexplicable bruises, scratches, or being pushed by an unseen presence. They report having their hair pulled or their limbs grabbed, and one woman was found unconscious nearby with bruises around her neck.
Oh, great. I'm gonna get choked out by a fucking ghost.
By a poltergeist. You came too close to my home. Ah! You almost heard my bones. I will not be embarrassed like that again.
Just my luck.
It would be. Some people have claimed that an evil presence has then followed them home to continue tormenting them somewhere else. The spiritualist medium Colin Grant attempted to lay ghosts to rest in Kirkyard in the year 2000, and a few weeks later he died of a heart attack. Many attribute this to the Mackenzie poltergeist in Greyfriars Kirkyard, with the black mausoleum to the left, and then dead animals also turn up near the mausoleum with no obvious cause of death. People see white figures and will often also hear knocking noises from beneath the ground.
Ooh, I hate that.
This is right up there, man. If I'm hearing noises that should not be happening in nature, get the fuck out. If I'm walking through a graveyard, if I'm walking through a graveyard and I know there are caskets beneath me and there are knocking sounds coming out from the ground, I would combust. I would be so terrified that I would just blow up on the spot. Like, that is so fucking scary.
Bury myself alive, you know?
Then you're putting yourself near the knocking sounds.
Oh,
like,
that's true.
You're like, I like how your answer is, I want to get closer. Who's in there?
Come out!
Come out, come out! I have something to prove! Oh my god, so scary. So strange fires have break out in the houses that surround Kirkyard, including that of Henderson, who lost his physical notes about the poltergeist in a house fire. Luckily, he also had a digital backup elsewhere, and these notes led to his book that he wrote about this phenomena called The Ghost That Haunted Itself, if anybody's interested. And
I love that title.
I know, right? It's very poetic.
It's also something I would do to myself. Not on purpose, though.
Haunt yourself? Oh, definitely by accident. But also, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can confirm. Tales of strange sightings in the Kirkyard itself abound. Yeah. Figures flit between headstones while white spectral birds make an appearance, and yet it's difficult to link these manifestations directly with the poltergeist. There's even a theory that the poltergeist is also responsible for paranormal activity in the South Bridge vaults. But again, this is a difficult link to make, so it's just a nearby area that's kind of known for having spooky activity. So how do we explain the lack of stories about hauntings before 1998? One theory is that Mackenzie lay dormant until he was disturbed by the homeless man, and is now awake, and one would assume kind of unhappy about it. Fair. And he now haunts his mausoleum and the surrounding area. And surprisingly, records do show that in the 19th century, local children believed that Mackenzie was restless in his tomb. So this isn't even the first time that reports of this tomb being restless have been around, which is freaky.
That is freaky. I don't like that.
For me, it's one thing if it's like a new thing and it's like, oh, we've awoken his spirit, and it's like, did we?
Have you?
Like, what happened? But if it's like, oh no, like 100 years ago, children were talking about this, and then nobody spoke about it again until this came up again, and now we know that these children were talking about it. At that point, I'm like, maybe there is somebody in there. Not saying there is, but
maybe
it's seeming more likely.
I just actually never want to hear bones clatter. That's my goal for the rest of my life. I do not want to hear
knocking underground. I do not want to hear bones clattering around in a casket. I'm good.
Or at all.
There's lots of things I don't want from this story.
I want none of it, actually.
So these children who had believed that Mackenzie was restless in his tomb, what they'd do is they'd run up to the mausoleum at nighttime and yell... This is going to be my attempt at a Scottish accent, by the way. It's not going to be good.
Okay, let's hear it.
Oh, it's going to sound so bad. Bloody Mackenzie, come out if you dare. Lift the sneck and draw the bar.
That was indeed terrible. Yeah.
I know! It's one of those things where, like, I can't do accents. I can do silly voices. I cannot do accents. It is so fucking bad, guys. Clearly. We know.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, which, if we translated to the English I speak, would say... Bloody Mackenzie, come out if you dare, lift the sneck, which I'm not really sure what that is. Lift its neck, maybe, and draw the bar. And they'd shout it through the keyhole of the mausoleum.
That sounds like a horrible idea. Like, do they want to be haunted? Maybe I
kind of think so. But you gotta think, like, they were probably so bored back then. Like, Pokemon didn't exist yet.
They had nothing.
What else do children do?
No
Hot
TikTok?
Wheels. Yeah, no TikTok. They had nothing. They just had yelling at ghosts. And that was it.
I guess when you got nothing to lose, you might as well go yell at a poltergeist and see what happens.
A little haunting here and there only hurts some people, I guess.
Exactly.
And remember the criminal who hid in the mausoleum, insisting that Mackenzie still moved around in his coffin? So there is some precedent to the idea of the Mackenzie poltergeist, and this was all well before the year 1999. Willie Telford, a tour guide in the area, thinks that Mackenzie lurks in the area due to his conscience. Perhaps he feels remorse for his treatment of the Coventers, and this could certainly explain why activity seems to center around a tomb in the Coventers prison and not specific to the Mackenzie mausoleum. Another theory involves the hysterical energy on the night of 1998, which has been then fed by visitors to the site. In this explanation, the continuing hysteria keeps the manifestation going. So then this is a excerpt from Icy. They say, when I did the City of the Dead tour in December 2016, the tour guide offered pheromones as an example. Say you gather a party of already anxious people into a confined space, like the Coventers prison, the pheromones excreted by the group can influence each other, thus spreading mass panic. Which I feel like we've kind of talked about on this show before, as far as, like, theories behind, like, why it is that there are some people who believe that places are haunted, or, like, this type of thing. And I do actually kind of think they might be onto something there, because there are a lot of weird things where it's like, if you walk into a building where something really horrific happened, a lot of people will feel uneasy without knowing that something horrific happened.
Yeah.
And it kind of does make me wonder if there's something to that.
Well, it's kind of like what we were talking about a few weeks ago now, about, like, driving into a town. Like, you can catch the vibe of the place just by, like, if there's something off, I feel like you can feel that.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's pheromones, because that feels like a really weird thing to say, or if it's just, like something in my lizard part of my brain, you know, like us humans and our lizard brains, like the primal part, like I don't know if that's like a survival instinct of some kind where it's just like picking up on certain like key indicators of stuff, but it is interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So then others think that the pheromones released by those imprisoned in the Coventers prison have somehow imprinted on that area. So then every time visitors swing by on a tour, those pheromones reactivate with those people being there and breathing it in, and we experience the poltergeist activity. Then Icy's note here is that their problem with the idea is that they're not sure if you could reactivate pheromones after 300 years. And not to mention that there was a recently disturbed grave at the time, like 1998, so not recent now, but more recent than 300 years, which would be several yards away from Coventers prison. Which is a great point that I didn't really think about, because you would think, like, if a place lies undisturbed for a certain amount of time, that should, like, in theory, disperse whatever essence or whatever's in the air.
Yeah, you would think.
But then, too, it's like, but is that why disturbed graves sometimes give people, like, the heebie-jeebies, too? Is that maybe one of the reasons? Because it's reactivating, like, pheromones or whatever? Like, again, another weird word to use, but for lack of a better word right now.
I don't know. Because I feel like that has, or maybe not always, but for a long time has been, like, a stereotype where, like, you know, in the Scary Movie, you see, like, a developer, like, digging up an old grave site, and then that's how the place becomes haunted.
Mm-hmm. Right? So, it's interesting to think about. Now, different theories attempt to explain the Mackenzie poltergeist. Mass hysteria, pheromones, overactive imaginations, electromagnetic radiation from nearby machinery, and even geology all play a role. Any of these explanations of all of them could be correct. That said, it's difficult to argue with the sheer volume of reports in a relatively short period of time. Furthermore, given the number of reports that involve physical assaults, it's hard to work out how geology would cause scratches to erupt on a person's body. And then, of course, there is another possibility, which is perhaps the Mackenzie poltergeist really does roam the grounds of Greyfriars Kirkyard.
Scandalous.
Scandalous! And that is the end of mine and Icy's story today.
Which theory are you leaning towards?
I understand that what makes it a poltergeist is the physical assault aspect of it, and that it's not, like, while there is activity within the mausoleum, and that's why they think it's this guy, that it's more so in the graveyard. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of partial to not necessarily mass hysteria, per se, because I feel like it would be a weird thing to be hysterical about if you can literally see scratches on other people's bodies. I feel like, I think that when people go through something traumatic, that it is possible to leave behind, like an imprint of some kind, whether that be pheromones or, like, energy signatures or whatever. Like, that makes sense to me. So, I feel like it could be that. And that might be tied to this homeless man being inside the mausoleum and kind of disturbing the air around the mausoleum, because those are very stagnant environments with not a lot of, like, air circulation, so I could kind of see that. Do I necessarily think it's a ghost? I mean, maybe, but I don't know.
For me, it's one of those things that I think, for me, it's fear, and I think fear can activate things in our minds and make us believe things that aren't necessarily true.
Yeah, this feels a little bit like that. It's almost like, because I feel like a lot of people who are going to Greyfriars Kirkyard know the history too, which is a big part of it. So then it's like, sure, you have a mixture of, like,
they already have the assumption.
Like, yeah, where, like, it's like what you said, where the fear, or at least the knowledge, is kind of like a motivating factor of whatever you end up emotionally experiencing while you're there, and that then can kind of trick your brain a little bit sometimes.
I would agree. I think honestly, like, a lot of the times our brain, we put pieces together, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's right. It's just like what our brain is, like, putting together, because we can all see things from very different points of views based on our lived experience. So I think that's part of it.
I totally agree. Yeah. This is one of those ones where it's a little harder. I find that poltergeist stories are always, like, kind of strange for me, because they're very, like, physically insidious. Like, what makes them a poltergeist is that they're generally aggressive, and there's some sort of, like, physical harm happening to the people involved. And the weirder part for me is that I feel like in other poltergeist stories I've told on the podcast, they're usually, like, in a house.
Yeah.
And this one seems most of the activities happening within this graveyard, specifically, which is interesting. So, I don't know. I feel like it would be a really interesting place to visit. Do I necessarily think that I'm going to get attacked by a poltergeist if I go there? No. But I do think it would be historically a very interesting experience with, like, a little bit of kind of like the fun, spooky factor.
I 1,000,000% agree with you.
Hell yeah. Well, if you liked today's episode, you can leave us a review wherever you're listening to our podcast. You can also check us out on our website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com. We have our email, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com, if you want to check us out on there. We have our Patreon, which is Wheel of Crime at Patreon, if you want to donate to the show. And we have our social media, which is on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, all at Wheel of Crime. And lastly, have you been to Friars Greyfriars? I keep saying graveyard. It's Friars Hang on. Kirkyard. Friars Kirkyard, not graveyard. Kirkyard, different place. If you want or have been there and you would like to write in and tell us about it, please do. Or if you happen to have a story yourself about having a little poltergeisty, like one of our previous listeners, feel free to write into the show and tell about it, because we do have our listener stories that come up throughout the year, and it is always a fun time to share your guys' stories.
Absolutely. And yes, that's it. That's all. And we'll see you next week for another new episode. Okay, bye.
Bye.